Fanfic Corner, presented by Jennifer. Nytota's story. And I'd like to apologize for the 2 typos there. Supposed to be a Y at the end of story and an O instead of a P in dragon. So again, I apologize for the 2 little typos. I must have missed them when I did the run through before I recorded this. The morning sun was barely peeking over the horizon when little Nyota was reluctantly plucked out of her dreams. The poor cub had only gotten a couple of hours of sleep the night before and wasn't too keen on waking up just yet. But the terrible scene that had played out in her dreams was something no one could sleep with. She opened her mouth with a wide yawn and stretched out her paws before her. She groaned and shook her sand-colored pelt. Her bright blue eyes scoped the dim, cool cave. All the lions and lionesses were sleeping soundly, which was typical for a Saturday morning. Carefully, she stood up and trotted over to the cave entrance. She stood there, examining all the familiar faces. But when her eyes fell upon the young Prince Copa, she quickly closed them. She knew what she had to do next, and she resented it. "Why?" she whispered to herself. "Why did I agree?" She tried to swallow the hot tears that burned her eyes, but it was no use. They streamed down her face and forced her to walk into the dawn-lighted morning. It was truly a sight to behold. Half of the golden sun could be seen on the horizon. It lit up the highest parts of the land with its brilliant yellow light. The sky above her had turned pale blue, with a few scattered stars still twinkling lightly. A soft pink halo surrounded the bright sun and lined the horizon. The savanna before her was still sleeping soundly in the warmth of the mid-morning sun, but in less than an hour it would be bustling with activity. Nyota took a deep breath and wiped her eyes. She made her way down to the base of the majestic Pride Rock. Slowly she walked away towards the water hole. Nyota then stopped and looked back at Pride Rock. But instead of a warm, friendly home, a dark, sad rock sat in its place. It was almost like it was disappointed in her. She quickly turned and faced the other way. She swiftly trotted, heading towards the water hole. As she did, she thought about the day this had all started. Oh, poor Nyota," Zira said sympathetically. I can't believe Simba would choose Alice instead of you. You had so much more potential to be Copa's betrothed. I'm sure you would have been a much better queen. Nyota sat whimpering and crying. Zira slowly sat down and pulled Nyota over to cry in her arms. She gently stroked the young cub's fur as Nyota cried her heart out into her pelt. But, Zira said, it's not all Simba's fault, you know. Nyota lifted her head. She sniffed. What do you mean? Nyota asked innocently. What I mean is, if Copa wanted you like he claimed, she stretched out each word with an evil tone, he would have asked his father for you instead. A few silent minutes went by. Then Nyota looked up at the lioness she thought was kind and smart. I'll do it, Nyota said with a sniff. Good, Zira said with an ugly smile painted on her face. She softly pushed the cub's head back into her arms. Simba will finally get what he deserves. When Nyota reached the watering hole, she leaned in to lap up some of the cool water. As she picked her tongue out of the water, ripples fanned out. The sun's soft light reflected off of the water and gave a brilliant sparkle. The sky was lightening up quickly. The birds fluttered from tree to tree, singing their morning songs. A light breeze blew through the green foliage, making them dance in the morning's beauty. All of these things would usually lift her heart so high she could almost feel herself in the air. But today was different. Today was the worst day of Nytota's life. Everything was in place, and it was Nytota's turn. She sat waiting for the young prince to join her at the watering hole. It was torture for her. After about 10 minutes, Copa came sauntering up to the water hole. He walked up to the muddy banks and bent down to drink his fill of clear water. Nyota took a large gulp, putting on a casual face to approach him. She stopped right next to him, and they took a moment to glance at their reflections. Hey, Copa, she greeted. He lifted his head. Copa smiled and swiped his paw across his wet mouth. Nyota, there you are. No wonder I couldn't find you in the cave. Copa replied. Yeah, I had a hard time sleeping last night, so I came out here, Nyota said. Oh, I'm sorry, Copa said. It happens to the best of us, she said. I was wondering if you wanted to... Nyota stopped and jerked her head up, looking off in the distance. Her ears moved around like radars, flinching at the slightest sound. What is it? Copa asked. Nyota looked back at him. Oh, I thought I heard something, but I guess... She was interrupted by a rustle in the grass. Nyota knew that was her cue, but everything inside of her was telling her to stop, to walk the other way. But she shook off the feeling and looked at Copa. His bronze brown eyes were filled with curiosity and excitement. Let's go find out what that is, Nyota exclaimed, walking towards the sound. All right, Copa replied eagerly. No, Copa, she thought. Her heart raced. Don't listen to me. Please don't listen to me. Nyota wished he would say he had lessons with his father, or he felt sick, or anything suddenly happening so that he wasn't allowed to follow her. But as she stood there, hoping, praying, wishing, the only thing that was happening was Copa calling, "Come on!" as he ran ahead of her. She reluctantly trudged through the tall golden grass and watched as Copa's back end got further and further away. Feelings of guilt, fear, sadness, and terror filled her heart as she thought of Copa's fate. She tried to push the feelings down, to get them away, but she couldn't. Her good friend's life was about to end, and it was partly her fault. couldn't stand the feeling, but she had no choice. She sighed and held back her sorrowful tears. Nyota picked up her paws, faster and faster, until she was right behind Copa. "Turn around, Copa, please. Please just turn around," her head screamed, but he didn't. He continued following the sound that led them closer and closer to the outlands. They reached a clearing and the noise stopped. Copa's eyes landed on a little green lizard that skidded up a small rock. "It's just a lizard," he chuckled. He turned and looked back at her with innocent eyes and a kind smile. She loved his smile. It made her heart ache to think that that was the last time she would ever see it. His smile faded when he saw her face. "What's wrong, Nyota?" he asked. She bit her lip and shook her head. He tilted his head. Then the cubs heard the grasses all around them rustle. The sound grew louder and louder. She saw a female figure emerge from the golden sea of swaying grass. Her job was done. Nyota knew who the figure was. It was Zira. Nyota turned and ran as fast as she could, but no matter how fast she ran, she couldn't get away fast enough. Then she heard them. Screams. Loud, blood-curdling screams. Copa's screams. She tried to run, but she was slowed down by the weight of pain and guilt. They were like lead weights pushing her down to the dusty savanna ground. Tears blurred her vision as she sank to the floor. She tried not to hear the pitiful screams that filled the air, but she heard them all too clearly. And that, my friends, is how curiosity killed this cat.